Okay, everybody. Welcome to day 4 of the 10-day Living Yoga Challenge. Happy to have you here this morning. Today we're going to be exploring the fourth of the yamas, a concept called Brahmacharya. And Brahmacharya can be translated as restraint, or sometimes it's translated as the right use of energy. And basically the idea behind this is that when we focus our energy on our physical self and our senses and our minds, and we spend our energy trying to satisfy the whims and desires that come up for us physically and mentally, that we're actually using our energy in an inappropriate way, in a way that ultimately kind of drains us and leaves us in this ever-seeking spiral of fulfilling these desires and needs that actually aren't really core needs for us. So the idea of practicing Brahmacharya in your life every day off the mat is that, if we can switch our focus from using our energy to satisfy these passing whims and desires of a physical nature, of a sensual nature, of a mental nature, then that energy can actually be used more positively in a spiritual practice and a spiritual growth, ultimately helping us come back into union with ourselves and with, source, something greater than ourselves as well. So let's talk about a few examples then of how this concept can play out day to day for each of us. Now, the really traditional interpretation of Brahmacharya is the idea of celibacy, which I know is not necessarily something that is a focus in our culture at this present day and time. And I'm certainly not suggesting that each one of us then needs to become celibate. However, I would ask you to consider the idea that sex is a sacred exchange of energy between yourself and another person or persons. And so if we're thinking about the right use of energy, we want to make sure that we're only opening ourselves up to this powerful exchange in situations that are loving and respectful and supportive. We want to make sure that we are honoring ourselves, honoring our feelings, honoring those of the other person or persons that we may be involved in this sexual exchange with, and also maybe choosing to be a little bit more discriminating about who you allow that sexual energy to be used with, and making sure it is in a situation that is kind of in your highest and best interest. A second way that we can see this concept playing out is an example of getting overly involved in other people's drama. I think for some of us, this might happen more frequently than for others. However, I'm thinking of the example of let's say a friend calls you one day after work and, she's super upset and she just had a terrible day because something really bad happened at work, or maybe she's in a fight or an argument with another mutual friend of yours, and as she's telling you her story and how she feels, you find yourself getting more and more worked up. All of a sudden you're angry for her, you're sad for her, and you start to kind of take on this other person's issues and feelings as your own, so that is an instance where you are kind of expending your energy for an issue or a situation that doesn't really belong to you. It's something that belongs to someone else. So if you find yourself in a situation today or anytime in the near future where you feel like you're kind of starting to get your energy pulled into a drama type situation that doesn't really involve you, I would encourage you to figure out how you can take a step back. And in the example I just mentioned, perhaps you can be a good friend, you can be a good listener, you can make space for your friend to share their authentic feelings, you can validate those feelings, but I think there's a way to do that without then getting ourselves worked up and putting our own energy into a situation that doesn't actually have to involve us necessarily. Another example of this, I think, is with the idea of worry. If you're like me, I am someone who finds themselves, it's kind of cyclical in nature, but I get in these periods where I'm just intensely worried about everything, how everything's going to turn out, because I'm kind of a control freak. And I'm like, oh my God, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? And so I think we've probably all encountered a situation in our lives where we are just so worked up and so worried and concerned and anxious about how something's going to turn out. And we're totally expending so much energy to do that, so much mental energy, and a lot of times really physical energy as well. If you've ever experienced extreme worry, it can mess with your stomach and your digestive system. That can be bad for the liver. Sometimes with a lot of worry and anxiety, that can cause adrenal fatigue, like long-term in the body. So, we want to think about, in the practice of Brahmacharya, we can think about, all right, we don't have control over many situations that we're involved in our lives. So if you are anxious or worried about something or how it's going to turn out, I invite you to start to adopt the practice of acceptance, of trying to make peace in your mind with the fact that, okay, this situation is unfolding. It's either going to end up like A or B or C, etc. So trying to accept any of these potential outcomes, and just, instead of viewing one outcome as like, oh, it'll be so good if this happens, but it'll be really bad if this other thing happens, try to start to see that every outcome is equal in terms of a learning and a growth opportunity for you in your own life. And just the more we lean into this practice of acceptance, the easier it becomes to not waste our energy in this constant cycle of worry and anxiety. I think the last way I'm going to challenge you to think about the concept of Brahmacharya today is with our commitments and what we spend our time doing. So some of us are people who are like totally overcommitted all the time. We're involved in all these different activities, and it takes so much energy to keep up with everything that we have going on in our schedule between work and social lives and friends and family commitments and our own personal hobbies, etc. So I would encourage you, along the lines of thinking about the right use of your energy. Look at all of the commitments and activities that you're involved in and think about, okay, which of those really serve you, like serve your soul at a deep level? Which of those are really helpful and serving to the people that you love? And which of those are really helpful and help to serve the community around you? I would say if it checks any of those boxes, then those are probably good uses of your energy. And if it doesn't tick any of those boxes, then maybe you would want to consider letting go of some of those commitments, some of those activities, some of those involvements. Similarly, I think instead of, overcommitting ourselves to be busy all the time, we also sometimes don't know what to do with our downtime. And that's when we find ourselves scrolling through social media, spending 2 hours on Instagram, watching YouTube videos of stuff we've already seen. I definitely do that sometimes. Constantly just scouring the internet and reading news story after news story after opinion after opinion. And, I think it's very noble to be involved. All of this technology has the opportunity to connect us to information outside of ourselves. And I think those are wonderful things. However, we want to be very careful that we don't expend our energy getting, scrolling on these things, getting inundated with this information that kind of takes us away from what we have going on inside of ourselves, our own growth and development, and the ways in which we can then use our personal peace to kind of serve those around us, I guess. So today's Live Your Yoga Off the Mat challenge for Brahmacharya is going to be connected to turning off the devices, not going on social media, not going and searching stuff on the internet, like really trying to cut out any unnecessary use of technology. What do I consider unnecessary use? Basically anything that you don't or that you aren't required to do for work. So obviously if you are working today and you have certain commitments that you have to, meet, I get that. But any extra time that you have, don't reach for the phone to open a social media app. Don't spend hours in the evening on TV or scrolling through the internet, researching a bunch of like random stuff. Try to use this day to tune out from all of that, to stop putting your energy into those external things, and to bring that energy back into yourself and to notice how much more time, how many more moments you have on your hands here and what you can use those moments for. So I wish you luck with today's challenge. I would love to hear from you and how it goes for you. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.